Shavua Tov, Happy New Week, everyone. Earlier today on the Hebrew calendar, it was the 18th of Cheshvan, and 18 in Hebrew stands for Chai, which means life. And I decided last week that I wanted to give a Dvar Torah, some words of Torah, at our synagogue this Shabbat, and obviously I couldn't record it because it's Shabbat, and I wanted to share this message. And the 18th of Cheshvan is very significant to me because it's my father's birthday on the Hebrew calendar. And this is sadly the first year that we are celebrating his birthday without him being here on this physical plane. And so I thought I wanted to honor my father's memory by giving over some words of Torah, and so I told the rabbi at our synagogue that I would do so, and I was trusting that all week long I would get some inspiration and Hashem would send me something really great to talk about. So I waited. Monday came, nothing. Oh, thank you, Camila. Tuesday came, nothing. Wednesday, nothing. So, during the week I put on Torah Anytime and I listened to the whole series on this week's Parsha, and which talks a lot about Avraham, which was my father's name. And interestingly enough, it's 9 months and 9 days to the day of my father's passing, and Abraham was 99 years old when he had his bris, his circumcision, which is talked about in this week's Parsha. So I was listening to all of these classes by one of my favorite teachers, Mrs. Esther Wien. Great classes, but still I had nothing to talk about. And then Thursday night I thought, okay, great. I'm going to go to Rabbi Pomensky's class. His classes are tremendous. I'm going to get something. Nothing. Until I was going to sleep Thursday night, and then boom, it popped in my head, and I'm like, now God? And he's like, you're complaining about my timing? And I was like, nope, no complaints at all. I wasn't sleeping anyway. I thank you so much. So a little background, first of all, about what happened, why this particular Thursday has significance to me. So a dear friend of mine was coming to Toronto from Eretz Yisrael, from Israel, and I was really hoping to be able to spend time with her. I was actually hoping that she would be able to stay at our house, or I could pick her up from the airport, something like that. And so I contacted the organizers, and there was all this back and forth, and committees, and discussions, and other people want her, and da-da-da-da. And finally, I just threw up my hands up, surrendered, and said, whatever is meant to be. And interesting, Thursday morning, after I had given up hope, or not just given up control, more so, of hoping to pick up my friend or spend some time with her, I get a message from both my friend and from the person who's hosting her, and saying, can you pick up so-and-so? Can you pick me up from the airport? And I was like, wow, thanks Hashem, that's awesome, amazing. Quite often that happens when we really let go of control and really let God run the show. He does. He's always running the show, but you see it more clearly when you let go of control. So if that wasn't enough to get that message, I get to the airport and I'm waiting, and I look, and the license plate right in front of me says Adoni, which is Hebrew for God is my master, which is a word that comes up a lot also in this week's Parsha. So I thought, okay, this is so interesting. And my friend came out and the clock was 3:33, which is a whole other story that is connected with my father. So great. I pick up my friend and we're driving along and we're heading down the Allen Road. And my friend is in town for like 3 minutes is what it feels like. And so we're chatting away, and I ask her, how's your speaking tour going? How are the engagements going? When did you start? And she said, I actually started, just over a week ago. And I started off at a Shabbaton with the famous Rabbi Tony Robbins. Okay, this is where, like, if we were live, I'd be getting a lot of laughter here. So she said that somebody she knew had these, big passes, and that she was inviting her to this Tony Robbins weekend rah-rah conference situation. So she went, and she said it was really, really great. And she said she learned that a lot of what we experience is really affected by our physiology. And she gave me an example, and she said, do you ever sit and you're listening to a speaker and you feel really inspired, and then you sit and you think about it and you're like, wow, yeah, I should really make that change in my life. I should really do that. And then what happens? Nothing. Until that thought comes up again, and then you sit back down and you think about it some more. I should really make that happen. And then it repeats. Well, why is that? The reason is your physiology. Because when you were thinking about making that change, you were sitting and thinking. It was a very passive activity. I have a friend in Winnipeg who she would write out all of her ideas and write out all of her plans, and that's great. But it was just writing. And then she would write some more until I would leave her voicemail messages of the sound of splashing water. Just jump into the pool. Get swimming. Stop thinking. Start doing. So this is what popped into my head, this conversation that I had with her, because I thought, well, it's like kind of bizarre that we have such short time together and we're talking about Tony Robbins, aside from it being interesting. But why is this happening now? And it hit me. This week's Torah portion, and starting with last week's Torah portion, Lech Lecha, go for yourself. It's really the beginning of the creation of the Jewish nation. And it's the first time that action is now involved. Up until now, we've had various situations that have not ended well. Number one, we can start off in the Garden of Eden. We ate from the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and had we waited until Shabbat, we could have eaten and it would have been fine. Mistake. In terms of when we built the golden calf, Moshe was supposed to come down from the mountain the following day. We miscalculated. It was all about timing. And now we have a Torah portion that's about movement. Move, lech lecha, go, leave your influences, leave all of the things that people have been trying to tell you and to persuade you about who you are. Leave all of that and go to yourself, for yourself. It's for your benefit. And then you will be a blessing. You can bring those blessings forward. And this is part of the Torah that Tony Robbins gets, because in his conferences, when there's an aha moment, everyone jumps up and starts dancing and moving around, because that's what it is. When you take things from a mental place and you put it into your body, then it can become a reality. And if you're at a conference and there's 100 people, you feel like the odd one out if you're up and dancing. But that would be me. But I'm like that. But when you're at a conference with 13,000 people and you're the one that's not dancing, you're the odd one out. So I can imagine an entire weekend of that, of like having all of this inspiration and putting it into your body. What an incredible change it can make in a person. So that's really what I took from it. And we can see an incredible moment here in this week's Torah portion. Avraham is having a conversation, whatever that means. He is having an experience with God himself. And in that moment, yes, dancing, Camila, in that moment, he turns, he sees three men. And he says to God, not exactly in these words, he says, pardon me, but I have to go take care of this right now. And he leaves his experience with God. And he doesn't do it to gain favor in God's eyes, because he is connected to God already. Like, he doesn't get any higher than that. So he's not doing it to gain any points. He's not doing it because, this is a mitzvah. He's doing it because he is so full of Avraham, of Abraham, who was chesed, kindness. So that was his response. He saw something, and then he saw the men, and he saw the opportunity to go do kindness. And what did he do? He didn't sit back and go, I wonder if they need anything. He saw them and ran to them to grab the opportunity, because that's who he is. So I want to give us all a blessing that we should fill ourselves up so much with who our real souls are, that we become completely who we are, and we bring that to the world. Now I just want to take this back to my father for a moment. His name was Avraham Ben Shlomo, born on the 18th of Cheshvan, life Cheshvan, because 18 is Chai and life. Cheshvan is known as Mar Cheshvan, Mar meaning bitter. Now there's a number of reasons why it's called bitter, and one idea is because the month of Tishrei that we just had was chock filled with holidays, lots of celebration. And now we're in this month where there's 0 holidays, nothing except for Rosh Chodesh, the new month. There's no holidays whatsoever. And so there's a bitterness to it. But if you flip the word mar, bitter, if you flip it around, it spells rum, which means to elevate. Now, interestingly enough, my grandmother's name, my father's mother, her last name was Rum, elevate. And she was known to sing about all of her sorrows. You know, she was living in Israel, Palestine in quotation marks, in the 1930s. And in order to have food on the table, it was a pretty big deal. Money wasn't flowing at that time. Life was very, very hard. And she sang about everything. And one day, I somehow ended up at the Ashkenaz festival down at the waterfront. And I went and I saw this concert of this group I'd never heard of before. And they're from France, and they're called Les Yeux Noirs, the black eyes. Not the black eyed peas, let's clarify. And they were incredible. This band, Les Yeux Noirs, they're French gypsy rockers. They were amazing. And I really, really enjoyed the concert. And so I went and I did some research online, and I was looking at their different albums that they had released, and I found a song called Genya Roma. And I freaked out because my grandmother's name was Genya Rom. And I thought, wow, this is really wild. So I stalked them. And the next time they came to Toronto after the concert, I went running up to the stage and I said, tell me, what's this song, Genya Roma? What's this song about? And they said, oh, it's a song about this poor woman, and she used to sing about all of her problems. And I thought, oh my gosh. That song might be about my grandmother. My grandmother might have been like some French gypsy rock idol. Who knows? Anyway, I wouldn't be surprised. So I just thought that was very, very interesting. And one year when my husband and I were on our way in Israel to go visit family from that side that none of us had ever met before, there was a big truck, and the whole way to Beersheba, where this family was living, on the back of the truck were big letters R-O-M, my grandmother's last name. So it's incredible when we have our eyes open. God's in front of us all the time, but our job is to open our eyes and look for him. And the more you look for him, the more you find him. And now I just want to say something about my father, Avraham, who was a true Avraham. And interesting that a lot of times his name would be pronounced Avram, which is of Rum, the father of elevation. And that's really a lot about who he was and who he still is. And I hope I'm bringing him nachas, happiness and joy. And all of this Torah should be a merit for his soul. So my father was definitely a person to bring elevation and joy into the world, and would just be like Avraham. It was just it was just who he was. He would be in a crowd of strangers and crack some kind of joke or make some kind of comment to a stranger beside him just to make that connection. When my brother was one of the founders of Manitoba Harvest Hemp Foods and Oils back in 98, I think it was, my parents had received a bunch of brochures, and my dad would see a pregnant woman and he'd run over and give her a brochure because he knew that taking hemp oil was so good for the baby during pregnancy. And he also would loan people money and never expect to receive it back. If they gave him back, okay, great. But he never expected it back. And in the 1970s in Winnipeg, when it was freezing, along with my grandfather and my uncle, my father built apartment buildings. He built homes for people. how Avraham like, right? Avraham was the quintessential host. And so not only did my father welcome people into his home, he built homes for other people to hopefully for them to welcome people into their home. And a little aside, my mother's Hebrew name is Hinda Sarah. So together, my parents are Avraham and Sarah. And whenever we would be out and they would meet people, it would sometimes be annoying, but they would continuously be telling people, whenever you're in town, come visit, come stay with us. So very much Avraham and Sarah, their ability to connect with other people and to extend kindness definitely shows through who they are. So again, this idea of physiology, of taking who you are, your thoughts, when you hear something, jump up. Can you imagine if in schools, instead of kids sitting for how many hours a day, that, can you imagine you're in school and you learn the Pythagorean theorem and then you jump up and go, yay, I understand the Pythagorean theorem and I'm never going to use this again in my life. But it will now work. Now it's sunk into your being. And so I give us a blessing that we should go out there and be movers and shakers, just like Avraham Avinu, Avraham our father, Abraham our father, movers and shakers, and always look forward, because if you look back, you become a salt shaker. See what I did there? Remember, just for those of you, a little refresher, Lot's wife, Avraham's nephew, his wife looked back and turned into a salt shaker. Okay, great. Anyway, everybody have a great, great week, and just be your best, because you are fabulous. God made you fabulous, and all he's asking of you is to fill yourself up with your greatest self and bring that forward to the world. It's going to bring more blessing into your life, and then you will be a blessing for other people in the world. Let's be responsible for one another. Blessings to you all. Have an amazing, amazing week. I love you. Shavua Tov. Gad Tov. Thank you for listening and for watching. Bye for now.